At 15, I was watering plants and bushes in the front yard of a friend's house in West Columbia. It was early afternoon and it was hot out. A Trans Am pulled in the driveway and an affable guy in his late 30s wearing jeans, a button-down shirt and a baseball cap got out to offer some pamphlets. He said, "Are your parents home?" And I said, "Well, this isn't my house, this is my friend's house." To which he said, "Okay, well, what about her parents? Are her parents home?" I said, "No, her mom's not home right now." "I'll just leave these with you," he told me as he approached. Suddenly the man pulled out a gun, pressed it to my neck and forced me into a large storage bin that was stowed on the back seat of the car. As he drove towards his apartment, I began counting the turns he made, in the hopes of later finding my way home again. I noticed details. He was listening to a classic rock station and smoking Marlboro Red cigarettes. My survival mechanism said, "All right, let's gather as much information as we can." Fear had barely even kicked in. The human will to survive and the survival mechanism really just can't be underestimated. On the way to his apartment, he pulled over and restrained me with handcuffs and put a gag in my mouth. He then took me to his cluttered apartment. Despite being terrorized, I tried to find ways to identify him. The names of his doctor and dentist were on his fridge, and I made sure to keep him calm. In the dawn hours, while he was asleep, I was able to free one hand from a pair of handcuffs and unclip a leg restraint. I quietly tiptoed to the front door and made my escape. I ran towards a car in the parking lot and asked the two people inside to take me to the police station, where I recounted my ordeal. I was asked by the officers to take them back to the man's apartment. Unfortunately, by the time the authorities got there, he had fled. Inside his apartment, they found a locked footlocker with newspaper clippings about the unsolved murders of 3 other girls. They had all gone missing more than 5 years before my abduction. Police tracked the man to Sarasota, and a high-speed chase there ended when he ran over spike strips on the highway and was attacked by a police dog. The man, now known to police as Evanitz, shot himself. I wouldn't say they were necessarily killers, but more along the lines of a human traffickers, or someone whose intentions were to cause harm to me. About 7 months ago, I drove from New York to Florida. I did this because I needed to be in Florida for my dad earlier than anticipated. I had to arrive before the rest of my family were to move down there, so I did this alone. I was 19 and had never driven further than a 3-hour distance by myself. I had made my first stop in Maryland along the way to get gas at a Wawa. That's when I began to realize how absolutely exhausted I was and decided I needed to call it for the night. I looked up hotels and saw there was one within the same parking lot as this Wawa. They refused to service me a room because I was not 21, so I walked back to my car and started looking for a place that would take me in. I got lost in the midst of my unbearable anxiety while looking for places. I was totally unaware of how far away I actually had parked from the rest of the other cars, not for a moment thinking that anything could possibly happen to me. Out of my peripheral vision, I saw a man walking toward my car with a hoodie. He was looking completely sketchy. He walked right up to my window and started asking me to roll my window down. I had a seriously bad gut feeling about this. I was already feeling on edge, so I just asked him to go away politely. He then proceeded to try to open my door. I got really startled, and as I put my car into drive, I saw 3 other men step out of a van behind him. They were parked in an alleyway, and they had by now also rushed towards my car. At this point, the guy with the hoodie was violently shaking my door handle, so I put my foot on the gas. As I was driving away, he had attempted to walk in front of my car. I could see them run to their van, and they proceeded to chase me all the way towards the intersection where they eventually gave up. I'm not sure what would have happened if I had forgotten to lock my door while I was parked. I'm even more unsure of what would have happened if I had decided to roll down the window. I ended up crying myself to sleep in a sketchy motel that night while a massive snowstorm hit Maryland, making my night tremendously worse. I was asked on a date by a waiter at my favorite restaurant. I was flattered that he asked me, because I always went with a group of girlfriends who were so fun and beautiful. We texted and talked on the phone for about 3 weeks before I agreed to go out to lunch with him. This was when I was 18 and just graduated high school. He picked me up from my house, first mistake. I was shocked at how nice of a car he had. It was an Audi, and the windows were all blacked out. I had just assumed being a waiter he wouldn't have a newer and expensive car. He was also only 19, at least that's what he told me. We went to lunch at a really fancy restaurant on the water. Lunch was normal and we had easy conversation. He walked me to the car and opened the door for me. When he got in the driver's seat, he locked the doors, which is not too strange until I noticed how his demeanor had changed, and he wasn't leaving the parking area. He just sat there staring ahead and wouldn't speak to me. I asked him a few times if he was okay, but he didn't respond. He finally just put a headset on and started to speak in Arabic to someone on his phone. I knew a few words of Arabic because of the area in Michigan I grew up in, but I didn't understand what he was saying. He started to drive, and a few minutes passed of him talking to someone and me just sitting silently. I tried to text my mom, but he got mad when he saw the phone. He freaked out. He took my phone while yelling at me in Arabic and pulling up to a house in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. He got out and locked me in. As I watched him walk up to house, I tried to get people to notice me before realizing no one could see me inside the car, not with blacked out windows. When he came back, he had a gun which he held toward me while getting back on the highway. I kept asking questions and he would just snicker while still talking to someone on his headset. He finally pulled over by a river somewhere and told me to get in the back seat, which I did. At this point, I was terrified. I was shaking and crying. He held the gun to my head and told me he was going to kill me now or kill me later. By now it was really late at night, and I told him that my parents would be looking for me and that they could track my phone. This was a complete lie. I also told him that I had sent his number plate to my parents before going into the restaurant and that they knew where he worked. He told me to move and he lay down on the back seat. He told me to scratch his back as hard as I could so that I made him bleed. Weird, I know. He then told me that it would look like I was the one attacking him and I would get in trouble if I didn't listen to him. While I was scratching him, he closed his eyes, and as soon as he did, I grabbed the gun from him and screamed at him to unlock the doors. He did, and I got out. He threw my phone into the river, drove away, and just left me in the middle of nowhere with his gun. I found an older couple and explained that I needed help and asked to use their phone. I really think he planned on killing me. If I didn't take a chance to grab his gun, I don't think I would be here today. I got the police involved after he kidnapped me, and they managed to arrest him. He was in my driveway stalking me when he was arrested. It was terrifying. He also had flowers sent to my work after he was arrested.